Welcome to today's webinar. My name's Jenna. I'm with Emerging Destinations. We represent cool companies in cool places. And the other lovely lady that you can see up there on your screen is Judy Carvalhal. She's the owner and founder of Enchanted Expeditions. They are a DMC in mainland Ecuador, and they also own 2 boats in the Galapagos Islands for small ship cruising and a lodge in the Galapagos Islands located on Santa Cruz as well. So since we're talking about Ecuador today, I'm going to take a quick minute to introduce our Americas portfolio. So you can see there up on your screen, we do have quite an extensive portfolio in both the Americas, Africa, and Europe. But just since we're talking about Ecuador today, I will introduce our Americas for you. So we have Colombian Journeys. They are a DMC in Colombia. Chile Concepts, they offer DMC services in Chile. We have La Coralina Island House, which is a property located in Bocas del Toro, Panama. Grand Hotels Lux, which is a chain of hotels in both Uruguay and Argentina. Las Torres Patagonia, which is a property down in Cerro del Paine National Park in Chile. And of course, as I mentioned before, Enchanted Expeditions, which is who you're going to be hearing more from today. So a couple housekeeping items to go over before I officially hand things off to Judy. This webinar will be recorded. So if you do have to step away for any reason or you join late or have to take off early, we will be sending the webinar recording out to everybody, if not later this week, very early next week. So if you do miss anything, don't worry, you will be getting that in the webinar follow-up. And then last but not least, we have Judy, as I mentioned, here joining us, as well as Sergio, who's on the back end, who will be here to answer any of your questions that you have at the end of the presentation. So please feel free to type those through using the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to as many of those as possible at the end of Judy's presentation, time permitting. So I think that's all that I have to say. Again, my email address is up there. If you do have any questions on any of the remaining accounts in our portfolio, I'm more than happy to assist you with that. So I think that's it for me, Judy. I'm going to hand it over to you to talk about birding in Ecuador.
Thank you, Jenna. As Jenna said, I'm Judy Carvalhal, and hello everyone, wherever you are. Good afternoon, good morning. And today I am really happy to present this to explain why Ecuador is such a hot spot for bird watching. So before we move on, just a little bit about Enchanted Expeditions, our story. We're a DMC for Ecuador and Galapagos. We do own 2 yachts and a lodge, as Jenna mentioned, and we are a family business with over 40 years, started by guides and nature enthusiasts. And for those of you who may not know or cannot remember, Ecuador is a very tiny country located right on the equator in South America. As you can see from this image, it's one of the smallest countries in South America, and the Galapagos Islands are off in the Pacific, 600 miles away to the west. A little bit about general information about Ecuador. It's roughly the size of Colorado. Our languages are Spanish and Quechua. Currency is the US dollar. Population about 17 million. Ethnic groups, Mestizo, Indigenous, Afro-Ecuadorian, and European. We do have 3 UNESCO heritage sites and 7 UNESCO biosphere reserves. And Quito here this is the capital, the major one of the biggest cities, with Guayaquil being slightly larger, and the third one here. So as you can see, we're located just south of Colombia and north of Peru on the western coast of South America. Now, lying on the equator, this little country is also crossed by the Andean mountain range. I'll go back and point that out to you. This mountain range here is the Andean mountain range, which is very significant, which give rise to different altitudinal and temperature zones with a wide range of habitats, each one with its own microclimate and environmental features. All these geographical and climatic variations play an important role in the immense biodiversity found in the country, creating opportunities for adaptation and the process of endemism. And due to this privileged geographical location, Ecuador offers the perfect conditions for serious bird watchers and nature-oriented tourists. It's considered one of the most compact, megadiverse countries in the world. 1,700 bird species, which represent 18% of the world species. 15% are endemic. And then the orchids, 3,000, 60% of all species on South America, 18% of the world's orchid species, 19% of protected areas, and of course all the volcanoes. With 1,700 bird species, 3,000 orchid species, various mammals, and over 3,000 species of butterflies, Ecuador is a nature lover's dream. We have 132 species of hummingbirds in Ecuador, up to 300 worldwide. And being a small country, we do travel less and bird more, from the high Andes, the cloud forest, to the rainforest. We do have 4 distinct regions right on the equator, which makes it very unique. We have the Galapagos, we have the Pacific coast, the Andean highlands, and the Amazon, all very distinct regions. The most attractive areas for bird watching on continental Ecuador would be the Amazon region, the highlands, and the coast. Ideal conditions for serious bird watching with this wide range of habitats, with the Andes cloud forests, the Paramo grasslands, the rainforest, Amazon and Choco regions, the coastal plains, Galapagos Islands. Each habitat has its own microclimate and environmental features, and thus accounting for such a high number of bird species. What can you expect? On a 2-week tour, we can expect to see at least 300 species of birds, and these numbers can easily grow for the most avid bird watchers. And of course, among the most interesting are hummingbirds, antpitas, quetzals, toucans, toucan barbets, and the 2 varieties of the Andean Cock of the rock, the magnificent Andean Condor, as well as the Harpy Eagle. So let's go through briefly the different regions. The Andean highlands, here we find the cloud forest and the Paramo. This is an image of what the cloud forest would look like around San Isidro. And here in the cloud forest, it's a subtropical rainforest. The cloud forests of Ecuador cover the slopes of the Andean mountains from about 2,000 feet to 9,000. They are forests of high biodiversity. A lot of birding happens in this area. Cloud forests are usually located at higher elevations and are much cooler than the tropical rainforests, which are located at lower elevations. There are 12 cloud forest parks and reserves in Ecuador. As well as a wealth of bird species, Ecuador's cloud forests are home to iconic other species, such as the spectacled bear, the jaguar, the sloth, the howler monkey, puma, and many other species. I want to mention the Choco UNESCO Biosphere. It was just recently in 2018 declared a UNESCO Biosphere site. It's located just 45 minutes northwest of Quito, of the capital Quito, of Ecuador, sorry. The Choco is on the western slopes of the Andean Mountains. The Amazon region is on the eastern. This is on the western, and which cuts off the Andean Mountains, which cut off the Amazon, sorry, from the Pacific coast. The Choco is one of the few regions that includes both rainforest and cloud forest. And the cloud forest ranges from 7,000 feet to 2,000, then begin the tropical rainforests. It's a birding mecca in this region, and it's close to Quito. Anyway, some bird species seen in cloud forests. Here is the black-banded owl, the Choco toucan, soar-billed hummingbird. I cannot show you 300, 1,700 species of birds, but here are some images. We have a trogon, toucans, toucanets, the torrent duck, tanager, and cock of the rock. So just to give you a little bit of a feel of what can be seen. Now the Paramo, completely different region. It's above the timberline and below the snow line, and this is the sort of regions you will find there. Grasslands. It's an Andean grassland. This high altitude ecosystem is located above the timberline, as I mentioned, and below the snow line. Here we find tiny hummingbirds, and to the other end of the scale, the Andean Condor with its 3-meter wingspan. It's one of the largest flying birds in the world. Other species here would be the caracola, the Andean lapwing, the Andean gull, the paramo pitpit, great thrush, bar-winged cinclodes, among others. There are over a dozen of these national parks in Ecuador that are within the paramo. The most visited are the Antisana, Cotopaxi, and Cajas. And here are some of the birds you would find. Of course, the Andean Condor, black-faced ibis, scarlet-billed mountain tanager. And this wonderful bird, the Andean Condor, is actually the national bird of Ecuador. Now we're going to head towards the east, towards the Amazon region, tropical rainforest. How do you access there? Well, there are two ways. You can either fly from Quito to one of the towns or overland, and that way you will be crossing Paramo and cloud forest. So some of our bird watching trips, we will do that. So we start in the highlands, go through the cloud forest, and then down into the rainforest. Then once we get there, we travel by motorized canoe to the various birding lodges. And there, bird watching is from the canoes, on canopy walkways, or towers, or on foot. There are various lodges throughout that region in Ecuador. And some of the rainforest birds would be the russet-backed pendula, the red-lored Amazon, the white-throated toucan, the huatzin, Harpy Eagle. So what I'm going to talk about now is a couple examples of our itineraries that we do on the mainland of Ecuador. That will give you a cross-section of all these regions. So here is what we call the Northern Ecuador itinerary. Here we cover the cloud forest, paramo, and rainforest. You'd start out in Quito. So by going into this region where my pointer is, here you'd go into the Choco area, you get cloud forest and rainforest. Around this area is all the paramo, the high grasslands. And from here you can go overland to this point, and from there you would take a canoe to one of the lodges in this region. So the other thing is sometimes people will fly to here. So as I said, it's either one or the other. I know this, I'm not going to go through in detail all of this, but this is later on. If you're interested, you go back to it and you'll see what our tours look like. This great all-around itinerary I just showed you, the Northern Ecuador loop, where we have paramo birds we see cloud forest and then into the rainforest. So it's a nice cross section and it's 2 weeks. The other one we call the South North along the Andes. Here again too, we cover the Paramo cloud forest and coastal region. So we'd start in Guayaquil and have all of this region here, all here, and then fly from Loja to Quito and bird in this region here. So this is for more experienced birders, much more intense, and you really cover coastal, paramo, cloud forest, and rainforest. And you can see, quite a bit in that. Here are some representative birds of the 4 regions of mainland Ecuador. So in the paramo, this would give you a list of examples of what can be found in the high grasslands, in the cloud forests. Here's a list of various birds seen in this region. What will you find in the 2 rainforests here and the coastal region? Okay, so that covers mainland Ecuador. The other region in Ecuador is the Galapagos Islands. This is what makes it so unique. Nowhere else can you find that. Just a little few facts here. We're 600 miles off the coast of Ecuador, 14 major islands and lots of little islands. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. 97% of this landmass is national park and one of the largest marine reserves in the world also. Animals are not afraid of humans, which also makes it very interesting for bird sighting. 5 human settlements and a human population of about 30,000 people. Oftentimes people are not aware of that. So how does it work? You fly from the mainland to Galapagos and board your yacht to cruise around the islands. This is actually the best way to actually see as many bird species as possible. So once you arrive, you board a boat and it will be your home for the next week or two. There are options to stay in hotels and do day tours, but if you really want to bird, you have to do an overnight, sleep on the boat and travel around. Most of the regions you're going to be birding along are dry coastal regions. However, we do visit the highlands of Santa Cruz and San Cristobal and Isabella on the itineraries, and there you'll get to see some of the bird species, land species that are only seen in the highlands. So the birds of Galapagos, what makes it so unique? There are 56 native bird species, and 80% are endemic, meaning they're found nowhere else in the world. That is 45 of them, 11 indigenous. So what we have are land birds, seabirds, and shorebirds. There are also about 29 migrant species to be spotted. Of course, I'll be showing just a few examples. Here are the iconic boobies that everybody wants to see. They're not endemic, but the bluefeet are always wonderful. The red-footed booby, the two morphs, the brown and the white, the Nazca booby, the largest of the three, and of course the Darwin finches. 13 species of Darwin's finches. These finches have historic importance in the field of evolutionary biology. The different beak sizes played a significant role in Darwin's formulation of his theory of evolution. Okay, here are some images of some land birds. The Galapagos dove, the Galapagos hawk, the Galapagos flycatcher, the mockingbird, the short-eared owl. 4 of these are endemic. And various shorebirds. You know, we have several species of herons. We have the lava gull, which is endemic. We have flamingos. And various seabirds. You only hear again the Galapagos penguin, the only penguin species to live on or near the equator. They're fairly small, about the size of your water bottle. The swallowtail gull, the magnificent frigate, and the endemic flightless cormorant, the waved albatross, which you can only find on one particular island, and it comes there to nest. There are a few pairs nesting on an island off the coast of Ecuador, but they're just nest on Hood Island. Itinerary options. So here in Galapagos, I'm pointing these out. The boats are only allowed to do, in 1 week, they can cover one area, and another week we cannot. The itineraries are set by the national park or approved by the national park. So to really see all the birds, you have to do both itineraries, meaning in 2 weeks. Because, for example, on this itinerary, what we call the Eastern Islands, you won't see the flightless cormorant. And on the Western Island itinerary, you won't see the red-footed booby, but you will see the flightless cormorant. So you get on board and you spend a week traveling around the islands is the way to actually see it. And how do you see the birds? You do you go either on dinghy rides, land excursions, sightseeing from the yachts, snorkeling, and kayaking. And obviously in snorkeling, you will actually see a penguin in the water. And this is just a brief typical day in Galapagos. You know, early morning breakfast, you go on shore, and then you snorkel, lunch, afternoon break, and you start the process again. Now, when we have bird watching trips, instead of having breakfast and then going on shore, we go on shore early, because that's when it's more active. And the same thing in the afternoon, we go as late as possible. You have to be off shore at 6 o'clock. So, in summary, why is Ecuador birdwatchers' utopia? Its privileged geographical location, the mountains, cloud forest, rainforest, and Galapagos, the geographical and climatic variations, wide range of habitats, high biodiversity, 1,700 bird species, 300 to 350 species can be spotted during a bird watching trip. High degree of endemism in a very small country. And this is what makes it really special. You can travel less and much more time to bird watch. So that was as just a general feeling of why Ecuador is so special in terms of for the bird watcher and how easy it is to access these areas. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Judy, for sharing a little bit of your passion for Ecuador birding with everyone today. I will remind everyone now would be the time to type through any questions that you might have for Judy or Sergio, who's also here on the back end. So please take a minute to type those through. As I mentioned before, we will get to as many of them as possible within our time frame today, but Judy was nice and concise in her presentation, so we should be able to answer quite a few for you here. And also just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, so if you did join late or have to step out, we will be sending the webinar recording out to everybody early next week at the latest. Okay, Judy, are you ready for some Q&A?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with an easy one for you. What is your personal favorite bird in Ecuador?
Okay. What is my favorite bird in Ecuador?
That's supposed to be the easy one.
I know, but there's so
Okay,
many.
there's so many, yeah.
Say the cormorant, the cormorant.
Any particular reason?
This cormorant, it has the most beautiful turquoise eyes.
Okay, I don't think we saw that one when I was there.
No, you weren't on that itinerary.
All right, so something to look forward to.
Yeah, it is quite, I mean, some people might say, what a strange thing to do. But it's so funny. I do like it. And it's so funny to watch them actually in the water because you can see them when they're fishing in the water.
So when you're snorkeling,
Yeah,
you can
or
see
even
them?
when you're standing
Oh,
on
cool.
shore and you're in Fernandina, you could see them really close to the shore sometimes.
Very cool.
I know it is a bit strange, and that's kind of funny with their little wings sticking out when they're drying their wings.
Oh, right. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just ciphering through. We got quite a few questions for you, so I'll start with one here, since that was the easy one. When is the best time to see hummingbirds and where?
Sergio would have to answer that.
All right, Sergio, you're up.
Okay, hello everyone. Yes, I mean whoever sent the question. Ecuador and mainland Ecuador, for example, is almost the same all year round. Hummingbirds are very common, and within all these itineraries that Judy already presented, you can see hummingbirds almost everywhere. I mean, in the highlands, in the Paramo, and from there downward everywhere, even in the jungle, in the cloud forest, of course. And so you can see them all the time. I mean, even in Quito, in the city, you see hummingbirds almost every day, if you pay attention, of course. But when we're on a tour, basically there are feeders that people just can see them, and it's much easier because you approach the feeder and you will see, I don't know how many species coming and going all the time, or fighting over to get the spot there on the feeder. So yeah, it's very common. So there are many species of hummingbird everywhere. So it will be hard to tell, but it's something that you will not miss.
So it's all year, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, all year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about the accommodations on the northern land birding route that you touched on briefly in your presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the accommodations outside of Quito at the there are various birding lodges. Once you leave, is that what you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't put it on the itinerary, but generally speaking, it would be there where you'd actually be staying. They are what you would call 3-4 star lodges. Probably 4 star, I would say. What do you say, Sergio? Because there are various lodges too. There are some that are better than others in terms of accommodation, but the birding is equal. What do you have to say on that, Sergio? Is he muted?
He
Can
is
you hear
muted.
me?
There, he's good. We can now. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I had to change my computer. No, yeah, okay. No, there are various lodges, of course, and yeah, it would be like between 4 stars or so normally. Thing is that there are a few choices in some areas where you can find something better than, where you can choose from. But yeah, around four stars, I would say, is the most appropriate category of
Yeah.
lodge. It will be comfortable. You have your private room, you have a private bathroom and hot water and everything. They usually have very good meals, or in some cases not so good, but not bad. And because these are very extensive itineraries sometimes, so we have to choose. But mostly people have a comfortable bed to sleep and stay during the night. Most of the day you spend outside, so you don't use your hotel room. It's just for the night basically, and your meals, of course.
Right. Yeah. Trying to utilize as much time as you can birding, and
Oh
to
yeah, of
follow
course.
to
Yeah, and
follow up with
Exactly.
that.
some areas have more choice than others. So like around the Mindo area, there are different lodges, different levels. So it would depend on the budget of the client, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
So how hard is it to see a harpy eagle?
Eh, It is a bit hard. I mean, it's not so easy. And but yes, you can see them. And of course, when we organize a bird watching tour, uh, we of course organize it with a specialist birder guide, and they will, in some cases, they locate nests, or they know where the nests are to try to find them, because it's much easier. But yeah, you can be lucky and see them anywhere, even flying above. But if that's not the case, you will see them somehow, somewhere. It cannot be guaranteed. All birds are, of course, they move, and it's hard to see them. It depends on luck as well, but it's not so difficult. I mean, I would say if you spend a few days in the jungle area, you will have a lot more chances to see
So
one.
Sergio, you used to be a guide in Ecuador. How
Yeah.
many times can you even count how many times you've seen one?
No, but I think about 4 or 5 at least that I remember. And sometimes, yeah, they're far away, so you cannot be 100% sure. But yes, when you are close enough, or they're perched, if you're lucky, yes. But I would say about 5 or 6 times, yeah, that I remember of.
That's amazing. So to switch gears a little bit, why would you choose Ecuador for birding over Colombia, for example?
Well,
Because
it's a bit difficult.
What was that, Judy?
no, I just added Ecuador is also Galapagos. I don't think Colombia has Galapagos.
No, absolutely not. And that's a very special
No,
place.
I'm
So
sure whoever asked that, they're talking about the mainland.
yes, yeah, the mainland portion for sure.
What would you say,
And
Sergio, as
well,
a
I
bird?
would say, I mean, I don't know Colombia very well. I mean, I've been there, so I cannot be 100% neutral in that aspect, because I've been in Ecuador for a long time. And but I know Colombia has some advantages and some disadvantages. And for example, in terms of, for example, maybe it's Colombia can be a little less expensive than Ecuador because we have the dollar as a currency, and Colombia has their own money, their own currency. So obviously that makes maybe in some cases some of a difference. Now, if it's for a special birder person, you will see different things also in Colombia and in Ecuador. They're similar, of course, they're very similar, but there are species that we have recorded in Ecuador. So as I say, I don't know much of Colombia, so I cannot be so precise about that. But I would say Ecuador has been, because of other, the political situation and all that, we have been doing all these birding tours much longer. So we know for sure the areas and we know what we'll see there. I know Colombia has been opening up now, but it's a bit more difficult, I would say. Maybe there should be another person who knows Colombia better to give a more,
Well,
a
and
better answer about that.
undoubtedly, Ecuador is much easier to get around, and just the size and the diversity within that small compact size, I think would definitely be a benefit of going to Ecuador. You can see so much variation and within such a short distance. So
Yeah.
uh, all right, we can probably take one or two more questions and then we'll wrap up. So if you do have any last minute questions, please make sure to type them through now. I know this is a birding webinar, but I have to, I'm still gonna ask this question that was typed through for us. Judy, what is it about your yacht itineraries that make them so good?
Well, we chose good itineraries. Because we cover as much as possible in the week. We don't just, when we request the itineraries from the national park. So when we designed them and requested them from the national park, we tried to incorporate as many visitor sites as possible so as to see as many species as possible. So the intention was to cover as many of the visitor sites. So I know some people may just concentrate more on the Central Islands or that sort of thing, but our itineraries are designed to see as much as possible. And that's what makes them excellent, actually.
Yeah, very good itineraries, absolutely. So to roll off that, we just had another question come in. What age do you allow children on your yachts?
We don't have an age restriction. We've actually allowed any age from babies. I mean, I have 4 children and I've traveled around the islands with them from the day they were 2 months old. So, and I've seen how children, I think it's important that children have that experience of being in Galapagos. So we are very accommodating to all ages.
We just had someone ask for Judy's contact details, so yes, I will definitely send that over to you, Steve. And then we had another nice comment here talking about why you would choose Ecuador over Colombia, and it is Enchanted Expeditions and the staff that you have and the expertise you offer in the country. So that's very nice. I think on that note, we will wrap things up for today. We don't want to take up too much time. We really appreciate everybody who has been here for this presentation and participated in the Q&A. As always, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Judy. I can definitely include Judy's contact details in the follow-up for you, but I'm also more than happy to help you with anything that you might need. So thank you so much for joining this webinar on birding in Ecuador, and we will keep you posted on the next webinar that we will do in coming months here.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Emerging Destinations.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.